So in our home, we have this thing we did when our kids were little called good news, bad news. And it's just silly. It's stupid. It's goofy. When my boys were little, we started this thing at bedtime where I would walk in and my wife would get so irritated because my spiritual gift is instigator. Even at the office where I work at CIY, the staff will tell you I'm the most likely to get people stirred up to do things they probably shouldn't do. It's like, it is my gift. And so I would put the boys to bed and my wife would be like, I should just do this because all you do is get them all wound up. That's all you do. And I was like, I do, because in my mind, if I can get them all wound up, I get out their last little bit of energy so she can sleep, so they can sleep. And she's like, no, it doesn't work that way. But in my mind, it did. So we would play this game, we read their little Bible stories when they were little, and then we would go through and I'd pray over them. And before I left, I would hear them, sometimes they would say it to me, they go, Daddy, good news, bad news? I go, all right, good news, bad news. So I'd come back into the room, I'm like, all right, what do you want first? You want the good news or you want the bad news? And they did pick something different every time. And all of a sudden, they would pull the blanket up over their heads. They'd start, burying themselves, hiding, and they go, what the bad news? Just when they're a little bitty. And I go, all right. And sometimes they'd say, we want the good news. I said, well, the good news is I'm eventually going to stop. And then they go, and what the bad news? They already knew what the bad news was. The bad news was the same every night. Same every time. And all of a sudden I go, the bad news is, I'm going to, and I would just pounce on them, wrestle them, tickle them, get them screaming and yelling and just going nuts. I try, my son's 25 now, it's just not the same, I can just say that. But when they were little, it was a lot of fun. Sometimes good news, bad news is a blast, and it's goofy and it's silly, and it ends up, everybody's having a good time. And then sometimes good news, bad news, is not so much fun. Like I remember when my boys, I don't know exactly how old they were, I could do the math, but I don't want to. But when they were younger, I remember we're sitting in a hospital room, and I go down and I take a knee, and it's just me and my boys in this hospital room, just the three of us. Sid's not in there yet. She's just a little baby. I said, guys, I got good news. Well, at that point, I just said I had bad news. And sometimes in our life, this good news, bad news it's a little more serious in nature. It's not just about like wrestling and tickling and fighting and just pounding each other in the room. This one in a hospital room, I'm looking at my boys and going, hey guys, I got bad news. And I have to explain to them, like, they're pretty young, what cancer is, that their mom has cancer, and trying to walk through. And at that point, we didn't know what that meant. Like, we knew that the type of cancer, and please hear this, my wife is going to be just fine. That's the good news. The good news is later on, after we waited a few weeks to get results back from Mayo Clinic and a lengthy letter that really was kind of confusing, I said, boys, I got good news. Mom's going to be just fine. She will die with cancer, not from it. Sometimes good news, bad news can be like a whole lot of fun and it's silly. Sometimes good news, bad news can be really, really painful and difficult. And you've had that in your life. You have. Tonight, I got good news and I got bad news. All right? Which one do you want first? Right? One dude yelled good, everyone else screamed bad. So that's kind of funny. We're going to go with the bad news first, then, since that was the overwhelming majority. Bad news is this. I know that a lot of you guys have made some really important decisions and progress spiritually this week. You've grown in relationships with one another. You've definitely grown in relationship with Jesus. But the bad news is, for both you and every adult leader in this room, you're going to screw this up, man. Totally. You're gonna blow it. Some of you won't even make it through tonight. Some of you on the bus ride home. Most of us within a week, man, we're just going to do something that spiritually, we're just going to screw this thing up. That's the bad news. Everyone here is going to screw up. It's reality. The good news is Jesus can and will and is willing to redeem everything, even your bad news. That's the story we're going to look at tonight. All right, before I jump into this text, I need some just candid honesty here, because I don't know where everyone else is, how long you've been around church and how many of these stories you know. And for me just to jump off the high dive here and go into details on a story that you may know nothing about, it's really gonna waste your time, and I don't wanna do that. So I need unfiltered, just complete honesty. This week we've talked nothing about a guy named Peter, okay? We're gonna be in the book of John tonight. We haven't talked about a guy named Peter at all. If you really, just tell me the truth, man. We're not gonna mock you. I just need to know if I need to give background on who Peter is. If you're I don't really know who Peter is, can I just I don't wanna make fun. Can you show me a show of hands if you don't know who Peter is and you don't really know a whole lot about him? Lift him up, be honest with me so I know if I need to go into details here. Okay, we get quite a few hands here. Okay, put your hands back down. Let me fire through this quickly, because if I start talking about Peter getting restored by Jesus in the midst of his mistakes, you're like, who's Peter and what mistake did he make? You know what I mean? You're like, that doesn't help me at all. Let me unpack who Peter is a little bit. Peter is one of Jesus' disciples. He meets him, and in fact, the very first day they meet, Peter's this commercial fisherman. And don't think like commercial fisherman, like he's on a bass boat or something like that, and he's out on Lake Michigan or your lake in your town and like catching bass and reeling them in like some guy like that. No. This is like deadliest catch commercial fisherman, okay? This is like rough captain of a small boat. He's got nets. They're throwing them out. It's how they make their money. It's how they catch fish, they clean them, they sell them. It's his job, his day job. So Peter's this commercial fisherman. Jesus shows up on the shore, and there's a bunch of people around. So he says, hey, Peter, can I borrow your boat? So Peter, Jesus gets in Peter's boat. He's like, yeah, that's fine, man. Pushes out a little ways away from the shore. The rest of the guys, they fished all night, and even as commercial fishermen, they have a bad night. They don't catch anything that night. Fish all night, don't catch a thing. Jesus is standing in Peter's boat, and he's trying to teach. He's just basically getting away from the shore, a bunch of people listening, and he starts teaching from Peter's boat. Rest of the boys, Peter's crew, they're all cleaning the nets, because again, they fished all night, didn't catch a thing. And then all of a sudden, Jesus is kind of wrapping up his teaching, and he looks over at this guy named Peter. He's like, hey, man, let's go back out and catch some fish. Peter's like, sorry, rabbi was the name they used. It meant like teacher, Sorry, teacher, appreciate you, preacher boy, but we already fished all night, man. We didn't catch anything. Jesus is like, I know. Do you want to catch something? He's like, yeah, preacher boy, we want to catch them. We're the fishermen. You're the teacher. We respect you, but we're the fishermen here. He's like, well, put your boat out. Come on, and the guys over cleaning the nets are like, no. We just clean these things. Peter's like, come on, get the nets, come on, get them on the boat. So they do. They throw their nets back in the boat. They go out there with the rabbi, the teacher. Jesus is like, throw your nets on that side of the boat. They're like, it's going to matter. We just fished here all night, man. We fished all night. We didn't catch anything. And Jesus is like, I said, throw your nets on that side of the boat now. Like, all right. And these guys are like, don't throw them over. They're going to get sticks in them. They're going to get debris in them. We got to clean them all over. Peter's like, throw the nets out. It's my boat, my nets. You're my crew. Throw the nets out. They throw the nets out and boom. Oh, man, they hit payload, man. They catch so many fish. Boom. And all of a sudden, Peter's just floored. Who is this guy? And Jesus just looks at him sitting in that boat. He says, man, Peter, do you want to spend the rest of your life as a commercial fisherman? Or do you want to do something significant with your life? He says, Peter, I want to teach you how not to fish for fish. You come with me, I'm going to teach you how to fish for men. Now, I know that sounds a little bit weird, like throwing nets over, like you pulling like bodies out or something. No. It's like a metaphor. Like he's saying, like, I'm going to teach you to fish for people to change their life. You want to change lives or do you want to catch fish, Peter? Peter's like, I'll leave everything for you. If you can make me catch fish like that, what could you do with the rest of my life? So what does he do? He leaves it all. He walks away from his boats. He walks away from his net. He takes a couple of guys there in the crew, and they're gone. And they become one of Jesus' disciples, and they spend the next 3 years. In fact, Jesus and Peter become like really, really good friends. You got 12 guys. There's 3 of them that are super tight. Peter's one of those guys. Peter, James, John, and Jesus are kind of this inner group, man. So as I set this story up about this guy named Peter blowing it, you need to understand like who he is. Jesus said, come follow me. And Peter says, I'm going to leave my occupation, man. No longer am I going to be a commercial fisherman. I'm changing my occupation, and now I'm following this teacher, and I'm going to change lives. I'm going to use the rest of my life. No more boats, no more nets. I'm into life change. That's what I'm doing now. So it goes on. They travel together for a few years. And again, this is for those of you guys that don't know a lot about Peter. They travel for a few years. And towards the very end, he knows he's going to die. Jesus is very well aware of what's coming his way. They're in this town called Jerusalem. They're having this last meal all together. Last meal these guys will ever eat together. And Jesus says, hey guys, I got to go. Peter's like, where you going, man? You're like one of my best friends. He's like, I got to go. Peter's like, well, I'll come with you. He's like, no, Peter, where I'm going, you can't go. At least not yet. You'll come later, but you can't come now. Peter's like, what do you mean I can't go? I've been with you everywhere for 3 years. I left my job for you. I left my occupation for you. Like, I'm in this with you. He's like, no, man, you don't understand. You can't go where I'm going. And of course, Jesus is talking about where he's talking about, I'm going to the cross is what he's talking about. Peter doesn't quite get it. He's like, no, I'll go anywhere you want to go. I'll lay down my life for you. I'm with you, Jesus. He's like, nah, but you're not, man. In fact, Peter, tonight, before the night ends, you're going to deny you even know me. You're going to deny that we're even friends. You're going to deny that we're even acquaintances. Peter's like, no. Every one of these jokers, talking about the other 12, every one of these guys might do it, but I won't. Jesus is like, yeah, you will. Peter's like, no, I won't. Yeah, you will. No, I won't. Yeah, you will. In fact, 3 times. By the end of the night, Peter, you're going to deny you even know me 3 times. One of Jesus' best friends is going to deny he even knows him 3 times by the end of the night. In fact, Jesus says there'll be this sign. You're going to hear this rooster crow, and that'll be your sign you just did it. Night goes on. Peter doesn't believe it. In fact, they come later on to arrest Jesus. When they arrest him, Peter's still in the fight, man. They come to arrest him. Peter pulls out a sword, tries to lop a guy's head off and takes off his ear. I mean, Peter's tough, man. As friends go, he's the kind of friend you'd think would have your back. And then all of a sudden, they take Jesus and they arrest him. And they take him into this inner courtyard over here, and Peter follows. He's trying to keep tabs on where Jesus is. And all of a sudden, John kind of knows some people. He's one of the other disciples, one of the other close friends. John knows some people. Like, he's the guy that's got the inside track. He kind of gets into where Jesus is, and he kind of like, hey, you let my friend in too? So Peter kind of sneaks in. He can't get into where John's at. So Peter's kind of this little courtyard. Picture Jesus over here in this house. They're yelling at him. They're interrogating him. Like, they're reading him the riot act. They're asking him all these questions. You can kind of hear what's going on. People are raising their voices. There's all this stuff going on. And Peter's in this courtyard. He can't really see what's happening, but he knows it's going bad. A little bit dark. It's pretty cold. And he's warming himself around this fire. But it's just like a charcoal fire. Okay? So there's not like a lot of light coming from it. And there's people all around. It's chilly. So people kind of huddle up around this. And all of a sudden, this guy goes, hey, man, aren't you one of those disciple boys? Aren't you one of those guys? Peter's like, no, man, not me. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure I'm not one of those guys. Warming his hands by the fire. Spoiler alert, there's one. Keeps warming his hands. All of a sudden, this girl goes, no, I think you're one of those guys. Like, I think you're one of his disciples. Peter's looking around like, oh, I'm sorry, did you say something? I thought you were talking about this guy next to me. No, I'm talking to you. Aren't you one of the guys? Peter's like, no, I'm not one of them. Not me. I'm not one. Spoiler alert, there's 2. Then all of a sudden, this other guy's like, no, I know you're one of them. I know you're one of them. The reason why this guy knows is because he went out that night. They went to arrest Jesus. He was there. And it was like, I don't know what relative it was, like his cousin or his brother, but the dude that got his ear cut off, that was his relative, okay? He's like, bro, I was there. You cut my cousin's ear off. I know you're one of them. Like, I know you, man. You still got sword. It's got blood on it. Like, you're one of them. He's like, no, not me, man. I'm not one of those. And then all of a sudden, I love the way Luke tells it in chapter 22. They bring Jesus out of this house. And at the exact moment, that 3rd time, spoiler alert, that's the 3rd time he did it. At that exact moment, Luke says that Peter and Jesus met eyeball to eyeball as he's standing around this little charcoal fire. Can you imagine that? I mean, it's hard to put this into a context we would all understand, but you can imagine if all of a sudden you walk into the situation and it's kind of a bad deal, and all you need is like a friend that's there for you. Somebody who has your back, somebody who's in this with you, and all of a sudden you walk in and they mention your name, and your friend's like, yeah, I got no clue who they are. Like, you can imagine what it felt like for Jesus. And in fact, Luke says that Jesus and Peter, as he's warming us by this fire, and that 3rd time he goes, man, I don't know who he is. I'm not one of his. Luke says, Luke's one of the Bible. It's a book in the Bible. Luke says they met eyeball to eyeball. They looked each other in the eye the 3rd time. Can you imagine the tension of that moment? And then the rooster crowed just like Jesus said it would. Like, you want to talk about screwing up royally? Peter just blew it, man. Like, he totally messed up. Totally denied that he knew who Jesus was. And in fact, his screw up is so public that every single gospel writer will write about it. I don't know if you've ever really screwed up in a public setting, but everybody talks about it. This is what's going on. Everybody will talk about this one. Everybody knows. Like, it is spread like wildfire. The rumor mill, and it's not even a rumor because it's true. Everybody knows, and man, Peter is just embarrassed. And in fact, there's one moment where they say, when Jesus raises from the dead, they said, hey, go tell the disciples and Peter, because he'd kind of withdrawn, man. He kind of distanced himself. He was so ashamed. Have you ever blown it on a public stage? My son the other day, he's just a little guy, 11, and he's learning to play a lot of baseball. Long story short, games in extra innings, This team, we just got to hold them. We got 2 outs. All we got to do is stop them. And Cy is a phenomenal athlete, just a phenomenal little athlete. And he's playing the outfield, they hit the ball to him. And Cy sometimes, instead of just like getting in good position as a baseball player in the outfield should do, one more step and Cy's centered on the ball and he's underneath it. But he got a little lazy and instead he ran over and put his hand out like this. Like he's so fast, one more step and he's centered and he's a great position. But he's kind of reached out like this, 2 outs in the game. Like if they score, it's a walk-off, game over. And he raises his glove up, thinks he's got it, and the ball goes right by his hand. Game over. I mean, Cy was so humiliated, man. Like if you've ever blown it on a public stage, like you've really screwed up to the point where lots of people knew, that's Peter right now. And usually you just want to go hide. Like I got to make this story short. I remember one time, can't go into details. I did something that I should not have done. I snuck out one night, was with some friends, doing things. I was wrong. Nothing I did was right. It was bad news. Shouldn't have been doing what I was doing. And then all of a sudden, one of the other friends was with us. Their dad figures out we're out doing things we shouldn't be doing. Long story short, that dad comes and finds their child, makes a phone call to my house. My dad goes looking, and of course, I'm not home. You know what it was like walking back to my house? What it was like waking up the next morning? Like, I've never heard cereal crunch so loud in my head as that morning when everyone in the house knew that I'd done wrong. Like, my brothers know, my mom knows, my dad knows, and no one says a word for a little bit. And you just want to, like, when you screwed up that royally, you just want to go away. That's Peter. Right now, he's screwed up so bad, he doesn't even want to be there. And this is where we find him in John 21. Remember when Jesus first met him, he says, hey man, you're going to give up your old occupation of being a commercial fisherman, and I'm going to turn you into somebody who actually changes lives. And Peter, it says immediately, he left everything and he followed Jesus. The last time Peter went fishing, the last time he fished was the day that Jesus met him and said, give up this occupation, I want to call you to something new. And when we pick up John, in John 21, Peter's back to his old ways. Here we go, John 21, you got your Bibles, go ahead and turn there, John 21. Would love it if you want to get your phone out, if you want to use that, use a physical Bible, but we're going to look through this a few times. While you're looking it up, I want you to say this phrase to me. Ready? Say this with me. Wait, what? Okay, say that. Wait, what? Okay, that's a phrase that happens in our house a lot. Okay, one more time. Ready? Wait, what? Okay, here's the context of how it happens in my home. Usually it's Silas. Love that kid. But most of the time I'm looking at Silas and I go, what? It's kind of a phrase, a dad phrase I know. Like, wait, what? Like the other day we're buying fireworks. I tell him that his best friend is going to be gone until July 12th. We buy fireworks. We're getting them in the bag. He already knows his friend will be back till July 12th. We're walking back over and Si's like, so can we shoot fireworks off tonight with Wyatt? And I'm like, wait, what? Like, Si, what day is it? I don't know. Si, what are you holding in your hand, son? Fireworks. Si, what day is it, Si? I don't know. Si, what day do we buy fireworks and shoot them off? July 4th. Si, when does your friend get back? July 12th. I'm like, wait, what? Like, Si, how do you not get this? Like, it's like that every day with Si. It's like, wait, what? Did you just say? My daughter, the same thing. Sometimes wait, what is a little more serious. Like today, Justin and I were just having this cool father-son moment before he got married. And I was just like, man, Justin, I appreciate you putting up with me and my intensity as a dad, because I'm just so intense. Like, you're awesome, man. And he looked at me and he goes, you know, Dad, he goes, there are lots of times I disagreed with you. Lots of times I want to argue back with you. But what I realized is in those moments, it just did not reveal the best side of you and the most spiritual side of you and the godliest side of you. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, man, my son just Jesus juked me like none other. Like, you didn't argue with me because of how I looked and like I was so unspiritual? He's like, yeah, pretty much. I just realized that anytime I argue with you as a dad, it just really brought out your worst nature. It's like, wait, what? Like, man, that hurts. Okay, so ready? Gonna say this? Wait, what? That's gonna happen a lot of time in this text. Here we go, John 21. And afterward, verse 1, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. It happened this way. Simon Peter, called Didymus, just means he's a twin. Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee. The disciples were together. I'm going out to fish. This is where you say? Exactly. You're going out to fish? This is not, I'm gonna grab my Zebco 33 out of the closet and grab a little tackle box and go out to the pond in our neighborhood. No. He had to go secure a boat, he had to secure a crew, and he had to secure nets. Wait, what? Peter, you were called. You were supposed to leave that. Wait, what? What in the world are you doing going back to your old job? You're going to see stuff like this all through the text. So get ready to say, wait, what, a few more times. I'm glad you fished. Simon Peter told them. He said, we'll go with you. So they went out that night in the boat, but that night they caught nothing. And this is where you say, they caught nothing. Do you remember the last time these guys went fishing and caught nothing? Was the first time Jesus ever met them. Last time these guys got in a boat and fished and caught nothing. It's like, this is total deja vu right now. They had to be out in the boat fishing going like, are we that bad? Have we lost our heads? Like, wait, what? We fished all night last time. You remember that? Last time we fished? Like, yeah, that's that. We met Jesus that next day. We caught a bunch of fish. Yeah. So they're back in the boat again, catching nothing. Let's move on. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore. The disciples did not realize it was Jesus. He called out to them, friends, haven't you any fish? I'm a fisherman. I hate that question. Catching anything? Like, guy's got a stringer full. No. He said, well, throw your net on the right side of the boat and you'll find some. This is where you say, wait, what? Now, that's exactly about what Jesus told them last time. Throw your net on the other side of the boat and you'll get some. Same scenario is playing out like the first day they ever met Jesus. And at this time, they don't know who he is. He's just the guy yelling from the shore. Hey, did you catch anything? No. Throw your net on the other side of the boat. You'll get some. And they're like, exactly what they're doing. Because in this moment, they're like, this feels all too familiar. Goes on in the text. And he says, then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it's the Lord. And he screams it. And as soon as Simon Peter heard him say it's the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment off, for he'd take it off, and he jumped into the water. Now here I need you to say, exactly. And the reason I need you to say it, because the last time that Peter jumped out of a boat to meet Jesus, he walked on water. The last time that Jesus and Peter met like this, Peter jumped out of a boat and he walked on water. Not today. Today, when he realizes it's the Lord, he says, I got to do whatever I can do, even if it means embarrassing myself in front of all my friends, whatever it takes, I got to get back to him. Moving on, this is what happens. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved, I already read that. It says, the other disciples fall in the boat, pulling the net full of fish. They weren't far off, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals. Oh, come on now. They saw fire burning coals. Now, that's a big deal now. It's a big deal. Doesn't sound like much. Saw fire burning coals. Who cares? What's the last time that Peter and Jesus met eyeball to eyeball over charcoal fire? Remember when that was? Yeah. These two boys haven't met eyeball to eyeball over fire since then. And in fact, that word for fire is only used 2 times in the New Testament. Yeah, the other time it's used, the only other time it's used is that night that Peter's warming his hands over a fire and he denies Jesus. Like there's some symbolism taking place here. They meet back over fire just like they did that night when he denied him 3 times. We keep moving on through the text. They saw fire burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Again, yeah, fish and bread. Fish and bread. That's interesting. The last time these guys got together with fish and bread, Jesus was feeding 5,000. Today, he's just going to feed about 6. I don't know where the bread comes from. I don't know where the fish comes from, but I'm sure when he walked up, he's like, oh, fish and bread. Well, you caught fish. All that's triggered in his mind, and they're all remembering the day that Jesus fed 5,000. So many memories flooding in. Jesus says, bring some of the fish you got caught. Simon Peter climbed aboard, dragged a net full of fish, 153. The net wasn't torn. And Jesus says, come and have breakfast. The last time these guys had a meal together, it was the Last Supper. It's the first time they're going to eat together again. Jesus says, come on, boys, let's eat. None of the disciples dared to ask, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread, and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. Again, you would say? Because that wording right there is really interesting, because it sounds almost exactly what Jesus does at this Last Supper when he talks about the fact his body's going to be broken, that his blood's going to be spilled, and he takes the bread and he breaks it and he gives it to them. There's so much symbolism. I know, man, I love a good movie. I love a good TV series, and this is one of those moments where, like, in terms of the Bible, you need to let your imagination play out. You need to let the theater, you need to let all of this stuff happen just like it's a movie in your mind. Like, there's so many things happen. When Jesus does this, he takes his bread, he breaks it, and he gives it to them, and all of them are like, wait, what? Like, I almost picture Jesus using almost the same motion, like, boom, remember this, boys? And they're like, oh, wait, what? We really screwed up. Like, we should not be here fishing, but usually that's what we do. When we screw up, we isolate ourselves, we separate ourselves, we distance ourselves. We think, man, we've screwed up. Peter doesn't come back to Jesus. Jesus comes looking for him. And I want to tell you the same thing's true in your life. Whether it's Jesus going after a lost sheep or a lost coin or whatever else it is, you are of value. And Jesus is pursuing you even tonight, in this space, in this moment. Even if you won't pursue him, he's still coming after you. And I love the fact that what Jesus does in this moment, he says, man, maybe what we need more is just a good meal. So they sit down and they eat. The next part gets pretty crazy because Jesus is going to restore Peter. And sometimes restoring, I think, is not just about like warm fuzzies. He's not just going to restore Peter to like, hey man, we're good. Because actually in the book of Luke, it talks about Peter and Jesus have already had that moment long before this. The restoration is not like, hey, we're good, like personally. No, this restoration is to purpose. And I think a lot of times what Satan wants to do, what your enemy wants to do, is he wants to marginalize you and separate you and tell you that you can't do anything good for God because all you've done is screw up. That because you've looked at images on your phone, you've done stuff in your dating life, or you can't get this addiction, or you said this, you did that, you went here, whatever else it is, his MO is always to separate like you're the only one and you have no more value. And Jesus wants to show up on the shore. He wants to cook you a good meal and say, wait, what? He told you what? He told you couldn't be used? He told you have no value? And Jesus says, wait, what? No. I'm here to set the record straight. I'm not just here to restore you and I spiritually. I'm here to restore even your purpose. And that's what he'll do in Peter's life. And here we go. When they'd finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John. There's only 3 times that Peter really do that. And every time he goes back to Peter's old name, it's a big deal. We don't have time to get into that. I'd do a wait what? We don't have time. He said, Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these? I don't want to make too much out of this, but in my opinion, some commentators say there's a lot to it. Some say there's not. I think there's something to this, and it really sticks out in my heart, and I've learned something from this. So, as you know, the Bible, if you didn't know, the Bible wasn't written in English, okay? In terms of like spoken things, be it Aramaic or Greek, we have this written in Greek, but this would have been written in a language that probably not very many people in this room could even read or understand today. The word they would use for love is, they'd have a few different words. I'm going to focus on 2. One is agape, and it's like this unconditional, like really, I would use like this deep, affectionate, over the top, like a God-shaped love. Phileo is another word, like when we get the word Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. It's like, I'm going to use the word like, and I know some of you guys are theologians. It's not perfect. Just work with me. Phileo is kind of like, man, I like you. Like, I'll say that, man, I love pizza, I love the Kansas City Chiefs, and I love my wife. Like, really? Okay. I use the same word for all 3. Well, man, I love my wife, I like the Chiefs, and pizza's good too. You know what I mean? Like, we use that word a lot in the English language, and it doesn't always convey it. In this text is going to use the word agape, which is this, man, I love, and then it's also going to use the word phileo, which is like. And here's how this plays out. Jesus says, hey, Simon, son of John, do you truly love me? What word do you think he uses? Yeah, he does. He uses agape. Like, man, do you love me more than these? We don't want to get into these and what Jesus is talking about. That's a whole other sermon, not for today. Yes, Lord, you know that and Peter says the word. He doesn't say agape. In fact, he looks at Jesus and says, yes, Lord, you know that I phileo you. You know that I like you. And I'm like, oh, Peter, maybe you didn't hear him right. Like, come on, man. You just screwed that up, Peter. He was on, he says again, he says, feed my lambs, okay? He's restoring him to purpose right now. Not just ask him a question, he's going to restore him and his purpose. That's part of the restoration. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you truly love me? And Jesus uses the word agape. And this time, Jesus spoke up enough that Peter can hear, okay? It's a little more clear. He answered, yes, Lord, you know that He does say phileo. Man, you can imagine like looking at somebody going, man, I love you, and I like you too. That just got awkward. It just feels a little bit weird. And it goes into the 3rd time, and he says, take care of my sheep. Again, one of the things Jesus is going to do in your life when you completely screw up and you've struggled is he'll make things right between the 2 of you, but look for him to restore your purpose as well. Jesus is not the kind of coach that when you make a mistake, he puts you on the bench and says, you'll never play on my team again. No, Jesus is the kind of coach, when you make a mistake, he walks over and he says, now listen, we're good. Let me help you understand what it was you did, and let me help coach you. In fact, I'm gonna give you a coach that's actually gonna live inside of you to help you learn from this. And then you know what I need you to do? I don't need you sitting on the bench. I need you back out on the field and in the game. Like, if you've ever been an athlete that's been restored like that when you blew it and everyone knew you blew it and the coach didn't just bench you and then give some, JV guy your spot or JV girl your spot and go, well, you better learn from that. Jesus isn't that kind of coach. Jesus comes back and says, man, not only to restore you personally, but I want to restore your purpose. So the third time, how many times did Peter deny? I forgot. Remember that? 3? The third time he asked, Simon, son of John, do you, and Jesus says, what word does he use? No, he doesn't say agape. And this is what I love about Jesus. I think with a twinkle in his eye, he looks at Peter and goes, hey, Peter, you phileo me. Like, do you like me, man? Like, are we good? And Peter finally wises up, man. He was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time. You got to think about it. Why? Because the dude stood over here over charcoal fire and goes, I don't know him, I don't know him, I don't know him. You got to think, man. Here Jesus asked him 3 times. He was hurt the third time. Because Jesus asked, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I, and just how the movie should go, Peter says, you know that I, he does say phileo. He says, you know that I like you. Can I tell you this spiritually, what that means for you? You don't need to fake it till you make it. You don't need to fake it till you make it. If the most you can give Jesus is, Jesus, I am wrecked, I have screwed up, I've completely blown it, but I want to be with you. That I'd love to be this raging person spiritually. I'd love to be this force in my family, force in my community, force in my school. But God, I just need you to meet me where I'm at. And Jesus says, if all you can tell me is that you like me, I'll start there. I can work with that. Because what's going to happen in Peter's life is transformational. Peter goes and he will leave those nets and he'll never become a commercial fisherman again. He walks away from that. He leaves the boats again, and he follows Jesus faithfully all the way to his death, all the way to the day. In fact, when they kill Peter, because he will no longer shut up about who Jesus is, he'll no longer stop admitting that he's aligned with him and his life is aligned with him. They actually will crucify Peter, and before they do, he says, man, crucify me upside down if you don't mind, because I don't feel worthy to be crucified the same way as Jesus. So they crucified him upside down, and church history says that his wife died right next to him. Like, it's amazing what this guy does. He goes through a transformation when he realizes that not only can his life and who he is be redeemed, but his entire purpose can be redeemed. You know what happens after this? 50 days after this day in this text. You know where Peter's at? 50 days after this day. Because Jesus has not only redeemed who he is, not only that part was good. Jesus had redeemed him. Jesus had made his life new, but he also gave him a new purpose. He gave him a whole new life, a whole new direction. 50 days after this text, Peter in the book of Acts will stand in front of 3,000, actually more than that, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people, and he will proclaim Jesus, and 3,000 people will come to Christ that day. 50 days from then. 50 days from this text, when Jesus is asking him, and he's hurt and he's broken, Jesus will restore his purpose with so much power that he'll literally proclaim the gospel. In fact, Peter will become the first person to understand this gospel is for all, and to proclaim the gospel to people that probably thought they didn't deserve it. Peter will go through all the known world. He'll stand in front of religious leaders, political leaders, and never again will be ashamed. Never again will he be shut down. 50 days from now, my question is for you, where will you be on August 28th? Where are you going to be on August 28th? I mean, that's 50 days from now for you. What would it look like if you truly said, Jesus, I know this week, whether I walked through a door or I made a decision, I repented of sin, but God, I don't want to just stay here. I want to be put back in the game. I want my story to be redeemed. I want maybe for some of you in your occupation to be redeemed. I don't want to be the same person 50 days from now. It's when you can literally look at Jesus and go, meet me where I am. I am yours. then the question for you is, where could you be 50 days from now? Where could you be on August 28th? Because I truly believe that if you allow the power of the Holy Spirit to transform not only who you are on the inside, but allow that same power to change who you are on the outside, you could be a different person just like Peter 50 days from now. But for some of you, and man, I mean this for a very small group of you, please hear me. This next part is not, 50 days from now is for all of us. But I want to talk to maybe 4 of you in the room right now. Maybe 4 people. Maybe 3. Maybe just 1 person in the whole room. I do believe that some of you also need to look in this room. Some of you need to think about where you could be 50 years from now. I remember sitting in this room. You know what changed Peter? Was the love of Jesus. The fact that he had run back to his old ways, back to his old name, back to his old game, taking his crew with him. I mean, he was not even where he needed to be. He had isolated and separated himself, was just going his own way. Then Jesus showed up. And he says, I want to redeem not just who you are with me, we're good, but I want to redeem the story and the purpose of your life. For me, I was 18 years old, 17 years old, 17 years old at a CIY event in Missouri. And a guy got up on a stage and says, man, if this love of Jesus has transformed you, if it's truly changed you, what if you spent the rest of your life telling people what it's done? And it caught me. And I realized, man, Christ's love compels me. I'm convinced that Jesus died. And at some level, who I am and what I want to be kind of died too. Like what I wanted to be was a constitutional lawyer. I wanted to run for Senate. I mean, I wanted to be a U.S. Senator. That's what I saw myself being. I was like, man, I can stand up, I can debate, I can be an orator, I can do whatever I want to do. I'll go toe-to-toe with somebody running from office, and my mind's like, I'll kick their butt and take the job. Like, I believed I could do it. And that's a great job. It's something that we need people to do. But for me, that day in Bolivar, Missouri, at 17 years old, I realized, well, man, what if I use, like, my gifts and talents to, like, fish for men? What if I said, man, no longer do I want this occupation, I want this occupation. And in that moment, Jesus said, come follow me. And so from that moment, I walked away from that. And I said, I'm going to pursue this for the rest of my days until I die. Like literally, I got my coffin in my office that I'll be buried in someday. And until this day, until they put me in that box, I will proclaim the salvation of Jesus Christ and the fact that he can not only redeem you spiritually, but he can redeem your story and your purpose as well. And for a select small group of you, he wants all of us to be transformed 50 days from now, but I think he wants a few of you to proclaim that message for the next 50 years, to make it your occupation. Some of you, and we need, please hear my story. Please hear my heart. One of the most transformational places for you to proclaim the gospel for many of you will be in a public school system teaching or coaching. For some of you, it's going to be raising godly children in a home. For some of you, it's going to be as an attorney. For some of you, it's going to be working in medicine or law enforcement or working in the trades like construction. Like, yes, 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 and yes, and yes, and yes. That's my boys. That's what my sons are doing. But for some of you, he's calling you to something different. For some of you, you've heard the knock of the Holy Spirit just pounding your door saying, man, I need people in this room also to fish for men. I need people to give up the occupation that we're going to do, which are lofty and good, kingdom work occupations. Please don't misunderstand my heart here. But I also want to call a few in this room right now and say, if you've been called to fish for men, and you know that, then by God, don't go back to boats. Don't go back to nets. So here's my question. I want you to transform 50 days from now. I want us all to recognize this wholeheartedly, that we have a responsibility to tell the world that he is for all. He is for all the attractive and the unattractive. He is for all the broken. He's for all the busy. He's for the charming and the cheaters, man. He is for the damaged and the discarded, no doubt. He's for the forgiving, and he's even for those who are cruel. He's for the headstrong, and he's for those they hurt. He's for the introvert and the extrovert. He is for all. He's for men, and he is for women. He's for the natives, and he is for the illegal immigrant. He's for parents. He's for the quirky in this room. He's for the rational. He's for sinners and saints. Man, he's for the tired. He's for virgins. and he is for victims of abuse, and he is even for those who have used their bodies of their own volition. He is for all, he is forever. We all need to proclaim that message for the next 50 days from now until we die. All of us need to do that, but I'm also going to ask this question very directly. If you know that Jesus called you to fish for men, and you find yourself being drawn back to old nets and old boats, I'm going to ask you to either one, reaffirm that call, or two, to stand up publicly right now and admit it. And my goodness, if you can't do it in a space like this, you're not going to be able to do it in a week or a month or 2 years from now. If that's you, and he's called you to fish for men for the next 50 years, I'm going to ask you right now, boldness, just to stand up right where you're at. Let's go. Stand up. Keep standing. Hey, man, wait. Don't get guilt tripped into this. Pull all the emotion out of it. I'm not elevating one thing above another. It's not my intent right now. My intent is to recognize that we need some people here. We got a whole lot of pastors retiring right now. We need some people that can come take my place, take Mark's place. That's what we need, take Lane's place. We need people taking the roles of some of the pastors in this room. Like, we need to raise up the next generation. We all must be kingdom workers. I'm hoping the Holy Spirit can transform us all. That come August 28th, we all look different 50 days from now. But I'm also asking for a remedy of you that until they put you 6 foot under and everyone goes and eats chicken potato salad, that you will proclaim the name of Jesus. You will be his ambassador as if God were making his appeal through you, because his love has compelled you to do it. And I pray that you do that not only 50 days from now. I pray by the power of the Holy Spirit you're still doing it, just like me, 50 years from now. Love you guys. Jesus. The good news is this. The bad news is you're going to screw up. The good news is Jesus is always pursuing you. He's looking for you. He will meet you on the shore. And he not only calls you back into life, he calls you back into purpose.